over the moon with that woman.
I will be his #1 fan, cheering him on for the rest of this lifetime, so.
After 10 years of marriage, Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO are going their separate ways.
When news broke that Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO were ending their 10-year marriage, fans were left in shock and confusion. This was a couple who had survived betrayal, rebuilt trust, renewed their vows, and even planned a future together. So what really changed behind the scenes? In rare honesty, Jelly Roll has now begun to reveal what truly led to the end of their love story. But the answer is not simple, and it is not what most people expected. This is the untold story behind their divorce. The shocking end of a 10-year love story. After nearly 10 years of marriage, Jelly Roll officially filed for divorce from Bunnie XO, and the news hit the public with a level of shock that few expected. For fans who had followed their journey from the beginning, it did not feel like just another celebrity breakup. It felt like something they never saw coming. This was a couple who never built their story around perfection or silence. Instead, they chose something far more rare in the world of fame: honesty. From the very beginning, Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO were open about their struggles. They spoke about their difficult pasts, their mistakes, and the emotional battles that shaped who they were. They did not hide the messy parts of their relationship. In fact, they often shared them publicly, showing both the pain and the progress. At times, they admitted their marriage had been tested in ways that almost broke them apart. Yet they always seemed to find a way back to each other. That openness is exactly what made this breakup so difficult to understand. Because when a couple has already survived betrayal, rebuilding trust, personal change, and public pressure, it becomes hard to imagine what could finally be strong enough to end it. They had already gone through the worst seasons together. They had already chosen forgiveness more than once. For many fans, they represented the idea that love could survive even after everything falls apart. But now, that same story has reached a point no one expected. The divorce filing did not just announce the end of a marriage. It opened a deeper sense of confusion, because there was no clear moment that explained why everything changed. Almost immediately, fans began searching through old interviews, social media posts, and public appearances, trying to find signs that might explain the breakup. But nothing seemed obvious enough to give a real answer. What makes it even more emotional is how closely their lives were tied together. This was not just a relationship built on love, it was built on shared struggle, shared growth, and shared survival. They watched each other change, supported each other through career breakthroughs, and stood together through personal battles that shaped their journey. So when the divorce finally became public, it left behind one question that still lingers. If they had already survived so much together, then what changed now? What happened that was strong enough to end a marriage that once seemed unshakable? That question now sits at the center of the story, pulling everyone into a deeper mystery that has no clear ending. After a decade of marriage, Jelly Roll filed for divorce from Bunnie XO. But could their marriage have been built on an illusion that has now backfired? Did Bunnie XO marry him because of his fame? Or did she come into his life when very few people even knew him? Let's uncover the details. The force behind Jelly Roll's rise. Long before Jelly Roll became a well-known name in music, his life looked very different from what it is today. He was not performing in big arenas or standing under bright stage lights. Instead, he was chasing a dream that felt distant and uncertain. Most of his shows were small, often in front of tiny crowds that barely filled a room. There were nights when the energy was low, the money was little, and the future felt unclear. He was simply a man trying to figure out how to turn his passion into something real, while dealing with the struggles that came with starting from nothing. At that time, success was not guaranteed. It was not even close. Every step forward came with doubt, setbacks, and moments that made giving up feel like the easier choice. But even in that difficult season of his life, something unexpected happened. Bunnie XO entered his world. She did not meet a famous artist or a rising star. She met someone still building himself from the ground up. A man with talent, yes, but also with scars, uncertainty, and a life that had not yet found stability. Where many people might have only seen struggle, she saw potential. She saw something deeper that others often missed. She believed there was more to his story than where he currently stood. Instead of walking away, she stayed. She encouraged him when doubt crept in. She supported his ambitions when the path forward looked unclear. She stood by him during personal battles that tested his strength and focus. Slowly, she became more than just someone in his life. She became someone who helped steady it. As time went on, their bond grew stronger. She played a role in his journey that went beyond emotional support. She helped him believe in possibilities he sometimes could not see for himself. Through ups and downs, through setbacks and small victories, she remained present. And during those years when success still felt like a distant dream, her belief in him never seemed to fade. Eventually, Jelly Roll began to rise. His music started reaching more people. His name started to grow. The small shows turned into larger stages. The uncertainty slowly gave way to recognition. And through all of it, he often gave credit to the woman who had been there before any of it happened. To him, Bunnie XO was never just a wife or a partner in the ordinary sense. She was someone who stood in the early, fragile chapter of his life and helped him keep going when nothing was certain. In his own words, over the years, she was one of the people who helped change the direction of his future. Jelly Roll's path crossed Bunnie XO at a time when he could barely define his direction in life. But how soon did they legalize their union? Was the feeling truly mutual, or did one person persuade the other? And could the choices they made at the very beginning have played a role in the breakup? Let's find out. The fast-moving love story. Their relationship did not begin in a world of fame, money, or carefully planned expectations. It started in a much simpler and more unexpected way. Two people, each carrying their own past and personal struggles, crossed paths in Las Vegas. At that moment, neither of them could have known that this meeting would eventually change the direction of their lives. What began as a normal encounter slowly turned into something deeper. It was not just attraction or excitement. It was a feeling of connection that neither of them had fully experienced before. As they spent more time talking, the conversations began to shift. They moved away from surface-level topics and started opening up about real life, where they had been, what they had gone through, and what they still hoped to achieve. Those conversations turned into something even more meaningful. They started talking about the future, not just the next day or the next week, but years ahead. They shared dreams, fears, and personal goals. At some point, one simple question about where they saw themselves in 5 years became something much bigger. It became a turning point, a moment where both of them began to imagine a shared future instead of separate paths. From the outside, everything moved very fast. Within a short time after meeting, they made the decision to get married. To many people watching from a distance, it looked rushed and unexpected. It did not follow the usual pace that most relationships take. There were no long public build-ups or carefully planned announcements. It happened quickly, almost suddenly, and that made people question it. But for them, the story felt different. It was not about rushing. It was about certainty in a moment that felt right. They believed they had found something real, something worth holding on to without waiting for perfect timing or outside approval. To them, it did not feel like confusion. It felt like clarity. Together, they stepped into a life built on trust and shared hope. They did not have everything figured out, but they believed they could figure it out together. Their relationship became a partnership shaped by faith in each other and the idea that whatever challenges came their way, they would face them side by side. In those early days, there was a strong sense of possibility. It was not a perfect story, but it was a hopeful one. Two people, coming from different struggles, chose to believe that they could build something lasting, even if the world around them did not fully understand it at the time. Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO got married shortly after meeting in a way that surprised many people. But did they truly know each other before saying "I do"? Or was there an event that later revealed their true colors? If so, what happened shortly after their union? And how deeply did it affect the trust they had built? Let's uncover the details. The betrayal that nearly ended it all. But no love story moves forward without being tested, and for Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO, that test came only a few years into their marriage. What had started as a fast, passionate bond built on trust and shared dreams suddenly hit a painful turning point that neither of them could ignore. Bunnie later revealed that Jelly Roll had been involved in a year-long affair. The truth did not arrive gently. It came as a shock that cut deep and changed everything in an instant. For her, it was not just about betrayal. It was about the sudden collapse of the world she thought she knew. The man she trusted most had become the source of her deepest hurt. The emotional impact was immediate and overwhelming. Questions replaced certainty. Memories that once felt warm now felt confusing. Every moment they had shared began to feel different in hindsight, as she tried to understand how something like this could happen without her knowing. It was the kind of pain that makes even the strongest people pause and rethink everything about love, trust, and loyalty. As the truth settled in, trust between them broke. The foundation on which they had built their marriage started to crack. Conversations became difficult. Emotions ran high. Silence often replaced understanding. What once felt like a united life suddenly turned into two people standing on opposite sides of pain. Eventually, the pressure became too heavy to carry together. The couple separated, and for a period of time, it truly looked like their marriage might be coming to an end much earlier than anyone ever expected. There was no clear path forward, only uncertainty and distance between them. From the outside, it seemed like the story had reached its breaking point. Many people watching from afar assumed this was the moment everything would fall apart completely. A fast-moving marriage, a deep betrayal, and now separation. It looked like the end of the road. But what makes this chapter so important in their story is not just what happened, but what it nearly became. Looking back, this period is often seen as the moment where everything could have changed forever. A single decision, a different reaction, or a final goodbye could have closed the door on their relationship entirely. Instead, it became one of the most defining and painful chapters of their journey, one that would later shape everything that came after, and forever remain a reminder of just how fragile even the strongest-looking relationships can be when trust is broken. Bunnie XO discovered that her partner had been involved in an affair shortly after their marriage, and it shattered her trust. But did that moment mark the end of their relationship, or did she still choose to give him another chance despite the betrayal? If so, what efforts did they both make to rebuild what was broken and keep the marriage alive? Let's find out. When walking away was easier. After the heartbreak, betrayal, and painful separation, many people believed the relationship was finished for good.
Well, Jelly Roll has filed for divorce from his wife, Bunnie XO, after nearly 10 years of marriage.
The damage seemed too deep, too heavy, and too broken to ever be fixed again. From the outside, it looked like there was no path back. But instead of walking away forever, Bunnie XO made a decision that shocked even those who knew them best. She decided to give the marriage another chance. This decision was not made lightly, and it was not because the pain disappeared overnight. The hurt was still there. The trust was still broken. The memories of what happened did not simply fade away. But in the middle of that pain, she held on to something deeper. A belief that people are not always defined by their worst mistakes. She believed that change was possible, and that someone could face their flaws, learn from them, and try to become better. Jelly Roll did not try to hide or deny what he had done. He openly admitted his mistake and accepted full responsibility for the hurt it caused. Rather than pretending the situation never happened, he chose to face it head-on, even when it was uncomfortable. He understood that repairing the damage would take more than just apologies. It would require time, patience, and steady effort. Most importantly, it demanded real, visible change in his actions, not just promises or words. What followed was not an easy journey. There was no quick fix or simple apology that could erase the past. Instead, they had to go through long and difficult conversations that forced them to confront uncomfortable truths. There were moments of silence, moments of frustration, and moments where moving forward seemed almost impossible. Rebuilding trust became a slow process, built one step at a time. Over time, something slowly began to change between them. The anger did not vanish right away, but understanding started to grow little by little. The space between them, once wide and cold, began to close again. They learned how to speak without hurting each other, how to truly listen, and how to face problems together instead of walking away. Little by little, the relationship began to heal. What once felt broken beyond repair started to take shape again in a different way. It was not the same as before, but it was real. Through effort, forgiveness, and time, they turned one of the darkest and most painful chapters of their lives into something stronger than they ever expected. A foundation built not on perfection, but on survival, honesty, and the choice to try again when walking away would have been easier. Despite betrayal and infidelity by Jelly Roll, Bunnie XO still chose to stay and reconcile. But what effort was made to rebuild their relationship? And what did that chapter in their lives truly symbolize? Now, let's uncover a powerful moment of healing, forgiveness, and a love that had already survived the worst. The vow renewal that seemed like a new beginning. By 2023, Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO seemed to have stepped into a completely different chapter of their lives together. After everything they had been through, pain, separation, mistakes, healing, and rebuilding trust, their relationship no longer looked like something fragile. It looked like something that had been tested by fire and somehow survived. That year, the couple made a powerful decision. They renewed their vows. But this was not just a romantic gesture or a simple celebration of love. It carried much deeper meaning. It was a public reminder of everything they had survived together and everything they had chosen to forgive along the way. For them, it was a moment to look back at the broken pieces of their past and recognize how far they had come. To many people watching from the outside, the ceremony felt like a clear sign that they had finally overcome the worst of it. This was a couple that had faced real challenges, trust issues, emotional pain, time apart, and the pressure of living life in the public eye. Yet, despite all of that, they were still together, still choosing each other, still standing side by side. Their renewed vows were not just about romance or tradition. They symbolized something stronger and more meaningful. They represented resilience, the ability to survive hardship without giving up. They represented forgiveness, the willingness to look past mistakes and choose healing instead of resentment. And perhaps most importantly, they represented hope. There was hope that the hardest days were finally behind them. Hope that the painful lessons they learned would guide and protect their future together. And hope that everything they had built over time had become strong enough to survive life's challenges and last for years to come. For fans, it was easy to see this moment as a kind of victory. It looked like proof that love could survive even after breaking down completely. It looked like a reminder that sometimes relationships do not end when they are damaged. They evolve, they rebuild, and they come back stronger than before. In that moment, their story felt complete in a way. Two people who had been through so much were finally standing in a place of peace, choosing each other again with full understanding of everything they had overcome. It felt like they had reached a point where nothing could shake them anymore. But more than anything, their vow renewal left behind a powerful feeling that maybe their best days were not behind them at all, but still waiting ahead, built on everything they had already survived together. Beyond Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO renewing their vows in 2023 to recommit themselves to their marriage, what other plans did they try to strengthen their union? And how deeply did they hold on to those hopes for their future together? Now, let's dive into the family dream they refused to give up on. The IVF and surrogacy plans. As their relationship moved forward after years of ups and downs, something important began to grow between them again: hope for the future. It was no longer just about surviving challenges or repairing past wounds. They started thinking about what came next and how they could build something meaningful together that went beyond their own story. One of the most personal parts of that future was their journey into IVF and surrogacy.
Let's talk a little bit about my IVF journey. Honestly, when I was going through this, I realized how lonely of a journey IVF is. It's very lonely.
This was not an easy path, and they did not hide that. They spoke openly about the emotional and physical challenges that came with it, as well as the hope that kept them going. For them, it was more than just medical steps. It was about the dream of becoming parents together and creating a new chapter of family life. They talked about expanding their family in a way that felt deeply intentional and full of love. It was not rushed or casual. It was something they had thought about carefully and emotionally. For Bunnie XO especially, the idea of having a child with Jelly Roll became something she held close to her heart. It represented not just motherhood, but the chance to build something lasting with the man she had gone through so much with. The couple even discussed the idea of welcoming twins. They imagined what life would look like with more children in their home, filling their space with laughter, energy, and new beginnings. They spoke about wanting to create a different kind of environment for their children, one filled with love, stability, and opportunities they both felt they never truly had while growing up. These conversations were not small or passing thoughts. They had serious plans for the future, plans that showed they were not just staying together, but actively building a life together. They were making decisions that required commitment, trust, and shared vision. From the outside, it looked like two people who were still fully invested in each other's future. That is what made everything that came later so difficult for many people to understand. Because when a couple is openly talking about growing their family, preparing for children, and planning a long-term life together, it does not usually feel like a relationship coming to an end. Instead, it felt like a story still in motion. A story of two people who, despite everything they had been through, were still choosing to move forward together, step by step, with the hope of building something even bigger than what they had before. The couple also made attempts at IVF and surrogacy in hopes of having children and strengthening their bond, but the journey did not come without challenges. Beyond the idea of growing their family, what other successes did they enjoy together over the years? And how fulfilling were those moments for both of them? Now, let's uncover the success that changed their lives forever. From small stages to sold-out arenas. While their private lives were going through constant changes, another major shift was happening at the same time. Jelly Roll's career was exploding in a way no one could have fully predicted. The same man who once performed in front of small, uncertain crowds was now standing on some of the biggest stages in country music. What used to be local shows and small venues had turned into sold-out arenas filled with thousands of fans singing his songs word for word. His rise to fame was fast, powerful, and life-changing. Awards started coming in. His music reached wider audiences. His story of struggle, survival, and redemption connected deeply with people from all walks of life. He was no longer just an underground artist trying to be heard. He had become one of the most recognizable names in modern country music. As his fame grew, so did the pressure around him. Every part of his life began to attract attention, from his music to his appearance and even his personal choices. Through it all, Bunnie XO stood firmly by his side. She did not step back when criticism came his way. Instead, she spoke up for him, defended him online, and made it clear that she would not allow strangers to tear him down. She also supported him through one of the most visible changes in his life, his weight loss journey. As Jelly Roll went through a dramatic transformation, losing a significant amount of weight and working on his health, Bunnie was there encouraging him every step of the way. She praised his progress, reminded people of his humanity, and continued to show pride in how far he had come, not just as an artist, but as a person. From the outside looking in, everything appeared strong. They looked united, supportive, and deeply connected. A couple that had survived past struggles and was now thriving in the spotlight together. Many people saw them as a powerful example of love that could withstand anything. But behind all the success and public admiration, life was becoming more complicated. Fame brings not only opportunity, but also constant pressure. Success changes routines, relationships, and expectations. The more attention they received, the more their lives were lived in public view, where every action could be praised, judged, or misunderstood. And while everything seemed strong on the surface, the reality of balancing personal growth, public pressure, and an ever-changing life in the spotlight was something few people outside their world could truly understand. Beyond Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO enjoying and cherishing his successful music career, how could they have ended up separating when everything seemed fine between them.
Their relationship has always been passionate but turbulent, with frequent, almost breakups followed by intense reconciliations. And it seems like this time they just weren't able to reconcile.
Could there have been hidden tension that was not visible to the public? Or is the true reason for their divorce still unclear and more complicated than anyone expected? Let's uncover the astonishing details. The complicated divorce story. The most surprising part of this story is that the earlier affair was not what finally ended the marriage. That painful moment had already happened, shaking them deeply and breaking the trust they once shared. It even pushed them apart for a while. Yet, despite all the hurt and emotional damage, they did not walk away forever. Instead, they made a choice that shocked many people. They stayed and tried to rebuild what had been broken. Over time, trust was slowly repaired. It did not happen overnight, and it did not happen easily, but it did happen. They worked through the pain, had difficult conversations, and learned how to live with the past without letting it define their future. Eventually, they reached a point where they could stand beside each other again. Their vows were renewed, symbolizing a fresh start. They even began making new plans for their lives, including hopes for their family and future together. From the outside, it looked like they had overcome one of the biggest tests a relationship could face. That is exactly what makes the later divorce so difficult for many people to understand. Because there was no single dramatic moment that clearly explained it, no obvious breaking point that everyone could point to. Instead, what happened seemed to come from something much deeper and more complicated than one mistake or one event. Over the years, both Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO changed in ways they may not have fully realized at the time. Life was moving fast for both of them. They were growing as individuals, facing new challenges, reaching new levels of success, and dealing with constant pressure from the public eye. The people they were when they first got married in Las Vegas were not the same people they had become years later. They slowly healed old emotional wounds that once influenced how they loved and made decisions. Along the way, they achieved dreams they once believed were out of reach, built stronger careers, and found their own voices in the world. They both grew into new versions of themselves, more confident and independent. But as they changed and evolved, that very growth quietly began to create distance between them. Sometimes, relationships do not end because of one shocking mistake. They do not always fall apart because of betrayal or conflict. Instead, they can fade or shift because two people begin to walk in different directions without even realizing it. Their goals change, their priorities evolve, their understanding of what they want from life no longer matches the same path. And maybe that is the quiet truth behind this divorce. Not a headline-defining scandal, not just one moment of pain from the past, but something more human and more complicated, the realization that even two people who truly care for each other can still grow into different futures, and sometimes love alone is not enough to keep both people on the same road. So, what do you think about Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO's separation? Could they still reconcile, or is it truly over? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.